Small business owners felt a bit more optimistic in June compared to the month prior, but are still pessimistic according to the National Federation of Independent Business. This pessimism is coming as owners contend with industry price hikes and endless hiring struggles. To give some much needed advice for small business owners on how to navigate the current economy is Executive Director of Research at NFIB, Holly Wade. Holly, great to see you and thanks for taking the time here with us. Let's first just start with the general read-in on small businesses right now. What are they continuing to combat, and what are some effective tools that they have still to be able to deploy even despite some of the pessimism?
Sure, it's great to be with you. And we did see a bit of an improvement in our headline measure of the small business sector, our optimism index, and that was a great sign. We saw a 1 point increase from last month, and it's the highest reading all year. And however, as you mentioned, they're still pessimistic, generally speaking. We haven't seen the index rise up to the 50-year average, which is 98. So we're a long ways from that, about 8 points away from where we would typically be in a good economy for small business owners. And right now, inflation and labor quality are still the two main problems that they're facing. And it's putting a lot of pressure on small business owners to try and retain those current employees, attract applicants for those open positions, and figure out how to absorb price increases that they continue to face.
You know, it's interesting, especially as we think about hiring and compensation struggles for those small business owners. I wonder where and in which industries this is impacting the most.
So right now, for those looking to hire, those that have unfilled job openings, we're seeing a lot of those in construction, transportation, manufacturing, kind of all in the service sector. So all of those industries that we have talked about over the last number of years that are really crunched in trying to find applicants and workers to help them fill orders and generate sales at their business. And that's very frustrating. One of the areas that is causing most of the inflation pressures right now, though, are in compensation. So they're still planning to increase compensation. We saw that tick up this last month. And so they're trying to still figure out how to absorb those prices. First, it hits their earnings, so it's absorbed by the owner's take-home pay until they can figure out how to manage increasing prices at their business, which is certainly a tricky business when they're competing with other businesses, large and small.
You know, that's really interesting because it tells us a lot about the consumer dynamic for a lot of these small businesses and how effective their strategies are at being able to sell to their customers of products or services, knowing that those customers are probably coming back and saying, hey, did you raise the prices on this? And if so, why is that? When can we expect them to abate a little bit? So what is that pricing kind of mechanism or pricing elasticity looking like for small businesses?
Well, it's certainly getting more difficult because, consumers are fatigued with price increases. They're, hesitant to go out and kind of absorb those costs. They're looking to be more strategic about their purchases, which makes a whole lot of sense. And so small business owners, especially when it's the owner, many of the customers know the owner personally. And so making those tough choices of which products or services to increase their prices that will keep them competitive and keep those customers going in or coming into their business it's tricky business for many business owners, and it takes a lot of thought and time and consideration on the part of the owner or an employee having to figure out that composition. But those price pressures are still there, certainly for those in the service industry that are having to pay higher compensation to retain talent. It will continue to be a problem, likely for the remainder of the year.
One last thing that we got to talk about here, some tips, some actionable insights here for small business owners that are navigating the current economy. How can they find some relief in certain parts of executing the business strategy, despite the dynamic that they're seeing on pressure side with labor force and compensation? And then additionally on the consumer side, where they're trying to sell into some of those either larger contracts or even one-time customers.
Sure. So a lot of tips that they've incorporated into their business operations over the last number of years. This isn't a new environment. It's just continuing, and it's, kind of becoming a bit more difficult. But some of the tips that they've incorporated and tips going forward are to look at those products and services that make most sense in increasing prices, that hopefully you won't lose customers. It takes a bit of thought and time. Unfortunately, that's one of the most valuable resources of a business owner is their time, and they're stretched pretty thin. But every so often, kind of reevaluating which product and services might be most appropriate in increasing those prices, and then also looking around to see what their competitors, what other small, medium, large size businesses are handling their price increases, so that they can, try and be in line and continue to be competitive in their industry.
Holly Wade, NFIB Research Director. Thanks so much for taking the time here with us today, Holly.
Thank you.
Certainly.